Attention, duped masses!
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
Old as dirt, pink slime, and death caps. Plus this day in history with R. Kelly arrested, and our song of the day by the Secret Sisters on Your Morning Monarchy for June 7th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Welcome to wherever you are for listener-supported media brought to you by you. Good morning. Thank you for joining us at MediaMonarchy.com/listen. We are broadcasting live at 9 a.m. Pacific Time every weekday, Monday through Friday, and we are glad you're here, my friends. Coming to you, as always, from the Peak Portland studios up here in Portland, Oregon. Hope you're doing well and safe and sound whenever, wherever you are, my friends, in a cube, in a car, in a garden. We're glad you're here. If you can give a little, I can give a lot. MediaMonarchy.com/support's the way you can keep us moving and grooving. I've been joking lately on the shows. Hey, tell a friend. Make an enemy. So I've had people, of course, tell me, yeah, I told somebody at work about your show, and then they stopped talking to me. These things will happen. MediaMonarchy.com/support has the PayPal, the Patreon, the Bitcoin, and the snail mail to keep us going. Huge thanks again to Michael J.G. for a fairly regular donation via PayPal.me/MediaMonarchy. And it's Wednesday. Wednesday means food, health, and environment news. We call it hashtag Food World Order. I coined that phrase on air many moons ago. It just kind of came out of my mouth, and I immediately went home that day and registered the website, and it's been a part of Media Monarchy for almost 10 years. Good grief. Might be a little exaggeration, but pretty close, I think. Pretty close. And guess what? It's all in the archives. It's all on the website. MediaMonarchy.com has been online since September 11th, 2005. Lots to talk about today, and I probably, as I come to you right now, 2 minutes after 9 a.m. Pacific Time, Wednesday, June 7th, 2017, everybody's watching the big Senate hearings. Must flee TV. Meanwhile, in other lamestream news, Trump to nominate Christopher Wray as the next FBI director. Christopher A. Wray, like Link Ray, W-R-A-Y, a white-collar criminal defense attorney who led the so-called Justice Department's criminal division. That's the more accurate name for them, during the George W. Bush administration, to serve as the next FBI director. His name does not ring a bell to me immediately, and the little photo they got tagged alongside from the Washington Compost, actually maybe a file one, maybe an old one. He looks pretty damn young. But photos are not always known for being highly accurate on algorithm-generated news pages. In rare attacks in Tehran, gunmen stormed parliament and shrine in assaults claimed, of course, by the Islamic State. Eric Trump says Democrats in Washington are, quote, not even people, as the dehumanization continues of both phony sides of the fake political paradigm. Yes, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Forget what the tweet was the other day. Ted Cruz actually had a fantastic one. Maybe Anarchy Ball retweeted that one. We are on the tweets at Media Monarchy. That's probably the best way to keep up with all the news that we've got coming out pretty much 24/7. And all the stories we're going to talk about today, just like every single day, we get the dozen or so stories and we tweet those out. So if you're in a position to follow along and you want to see the stories and read along and follow the bouncing ball, as I like to say, you can find all those stories posted up about an hour before showtime on the tweets at Media Monarchy. And of course, everything we say and play will be included in the show notes once this podcast goes into eternity. And we're glad you're here. Again, I appreciate you spending this time. Hopefully you find it a positive, fun way to spend your time. Infotainment, hopefully. For your freestyle. Speaking of broken clocks, North Korea slams Trump's decision to pull out of Paris Accord as the height of egotism. Again, the so-called Department of Justice ends Holder-era slush fund payouts to outside groups. The Justice Department announced today it will no longer allow prosecutors to strike settlement agreements with big companies, directing them to make payouts to outside groups, ending an Obama-era practice that Republicans decried as a slush fund. Also see on the sidebar about news in my own Peak Portland. Again, the city that Bushes used to call Little Beirut, which I suppose for some reasons you still probably could call it that. Portland Metro Wednesday traffic. Rose Festival fleet arrives with bridge lifts this afternoon. That's right, Portland is a port city. And we open our city up to, of course, all the little murderers and warmongers. Everybody loves it. Woo, look at the ships. and we all get to have parades and have a good time and have Ferris wheels and funnel cake and all that good stuff. And we forget that it's all basically in service of the empire that, of course, on certain weekends, they'll all claim to be against. Really, if you just want to put on a costume and act like you're into something on weekends, it doesn't really do anything. You kind of have to make it a part of your life. Words to live by, my friends. Let's get into our Food World Order news. Hashtag Food World Order. We got all your food, health, and environment news. And let's start, as I've been trying to, with a little bit of good news. Positive news. And this sounds like a story we would have talked about on our latest episode of Good News next week, which again, I'll remind you to check out. Some of the ways that we are winning and solutions-oriented stories. And you even get a little gratuitous shot of my very cute cat, Frankie. That might be worth it enough right there. No one would blame you for not wanting your body to be infested with creatures from your garden, but maybe you should rethink your position. Your garden has its own microbiome, and research suggests it's good for you. This just in. Our health depends on the flourishing microbiome in our guts and on how much of the natural world's microbiome we let infiltrate. Lately, thanks to modern life is rubbish. We don't let a lot of it in. But in a string of pioneering studies, scientists are beginning to look at what would happen if we literally inject microbes from the soil into our bodies, reintroducing us to the ancient relationship between bacteria and humans. So far, the results have been uplifting, so to speak, to both the scientists and the subjects in their study. In 2004, Mary O'Brien, oncologist at the Royal Marsden Hospital in London, published a paper with unexpected results. She injected lung cancer patients with a common harmless soil bacteria, Mycobacterium vaccae, to see if it could prolong their life. M. vaccae had some success in earlier trials when it was tested for its ability to fight drug-resistant pulmonary tuberculosis and boost immune system response. O'Brien thought maybe the bacteria could help her patients' immune systems beat back the cancer in their lungs. It failed. Only it succeeded elsewhere. The bacteria injection significantly improved patient quality of life, O'Brien wrote in the paper detailing her findings. Her patients were happier, expressed more vitality, and better cognitive function. In short, it reduced the emotional toll of advanced cancer. A few years later, Christopher Lowry, a neuroscientist at the University of Bristol, injected M. vaccae into mice and subjected them to a series of stress tests. The ones inoculated with the bacteria showed far less stressed behavior than their untreated counterparts. In fact, they acted as if they were on antidepressants. And we would, of course, stop there to say antidepressants that actually work, that don't make you, want to kill yourself. Real antidepressants. Not the kind that gets capitalized, that gets sold from Big Pharma, meaning it works against depression. In a 2007 paper published in the journal Neuroscience, Lowry and his team wrote that the bacteria activated groups of neurons in the mouse brains responsible for producing serotonin, a neurotransmitter that, when impaired, can cause depression. Even more intriguingly, the neurons that lit up were also known to be related to immune response, suggesting an intimate connection between the immune system and emotional health. The world of biomedical research has already fallen in love with the promising realm of the human gut microbiome. The body of emerging evidence tells us millions of microbes in our digestive tract influence our immune systems, our smell, our mood, and possibly even our attractiveness to mosquitoes and other people. But M. vaccae expands this thinking to the microbiome of the pile of mulch in your backyard. There's now pretty good evidence to draw at least an outline of a conclusion. Breathing in, playing in, digging in dirt, good for your health. Our modern, sterilized life of sealed-off office buildings and homes are likely not. And I think about this too. You see the people hobbling from their cars back to their house. And it's like, oh, this is the time you're outside today. When you waddle from your house to your little car and you drive your little car to your little box that you go sit in your little box for 8-10 hours a day. Then you come home and then you waddle on up to the house. I'm struggling working from home so much, honestly. It can be difficult. We're now a year and a half in. I'm nearly 2 years out from the commercial radio station. And there definitely are days where I go, oh my God, I got to get outside. I have to see some humans. I've only talked to a cat today. Researchers have already found clear evidence that childhood exposure to outdoor microbes is likely a more robust immune system. For example, Bavarian farm children, farm-raised, free-range Bavarian farm children, who spent time in family animal stables and drank farm milk had drastically lower rates of asthma and allergies throughout their lives than their neighbors who did not. But the rest of us, maybe not raised on farms, may be missing out on that sort of protection. Some counterbalance, like spending time in a garden, might change that. Dirt has a microbiome, and it may double as an antidepressant. Now, we have talked about this on Good News Next Week several times. It was even the cover story a couple of weeks ago with the art you may remember of Bart urinating out in the open. "The world is my toilet now," is the line he says. Being in nature naturally makes you feel better. Dirt as antidepressant. I think that's a pretty good way to start our Food World Order episode. And a positive way to think about things that you can do with you and yours and your family and your friends. I mean, honestly, we know Frank loves to play in the dirt. The balcony garden that we've been working on, that we've been doing now for the last couple of years. Kind of make a mess on there when it's slowly being built. And there are times I've let Frank in there, and she immediately goes out to the pile of dirt on the floor and puts her head down in it and rolls all in it. Must feel pretty good. You're listening to The Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, June 7th, 2017. I'm James Evan Pilato, your host, webmaster, DJ, and so very much more from the mighty, listener-supported MediaMonarchy.com. Now, when I saw a headline like this, I knew I had to get into it, and it is quite interesting. How the transgenic petunia carnage of 2017 began. 2 years ago, plant biologist Teemu Tiri was walking by a train station in Helsinki when he noticed some vivid orange petunias in a planter. The flowers reminded Tiri, who had studied plant pigments at the University of Helsinki, of blooms created in a landmark gene engineering experiment some 30 years earlier. As far as he knew, those plants never made it to market, but he was curious and he stuck a stem in his backpack. Now, that chance encounter has ended up forcing flower sellers on 2 continents to destroy vast numbers of petunias. Thierry ultimately confirmed that the plants contained foreign DNA. And he tipped off regulators in Europe and the United States who have identified other commercial strains that are genetically engineered. Although officials say the GE petunias pose no threat to human health or the environment and likely were unknowingly sold for years, they've asked They've asked sellers to destroy the flowers because it's illegal to sell them in the United States and Europe without a permit. Ironically, proposed revisions to U.S. biotechnology rules now under discussion might have exempted the harmless petunias from regulation, but the petunia carnage highlights the growing complexity of regulating GE plants, which have a long history of showing up where they aren't allowed and can be hard to track. And you thought tulip mania was bad. Transgenic petunia carnage. Purveyors of petunia varieties with names such as Trilogy Mango and African Sunset were likely unaware that orange pigmented petunias are the product of a prominent biotechnology study. In a 1987 Nature paper, a team led by plant geneticist Peter Meyer, then with the Max Planck Institute for Plant Breeding Research in Cologne, Germany, showed that inserting a maize gene into a petunia enabled it to produce the pigment pelargonidin and take on a salmon color. The 30,000 petunias that the team planted in a trial were the first transgenic plants ever released into the field in Germany, notes Meyer, now at the University of Leeds in the UK. Public resistance was fierce at the time. He recalls the term transgenic was basically used synonymously with toxic. The controversy didn't deter S&G Seeds, an affiliate of the Dutch seed company Zaduni, from licensing the technology, and in 1995, it reported creating petunias with more stable gene expression and a vivid orange color, fit for commercial breeding. And you pretty much know where the rest of the story goes. And we should recall this every time they're telling us, oh, these GM things are great, you have nothing to worry about. Except they weren't supposed to get out, and they always do. That's the lesson. They seem to always make it out. Oh, whoops, it's an accident. Sorry, that virus we created got out of the lab. Transgenic petunia carnage. Now, transgenic is the word they use to talk about genetic engineering. This is always good to point out. Just like typing in the word chemtrails isn't going to get you a lot of good info. But if you start to use their language, geoengineering, stratospheric aerosol injection, if you use the technical terms, you'll find the people doing the shit talking about it openly. So something you can do, and I've done this for years, you can basically set up little news alerts on words and subjects and phrases. Transgenic is one of the ones I use. That's how I found this story. And it comes from science. Trust the science, my friends. Continuing on your Food World Order discoveries, a new hidden layer of Earth's mantle under Eastern Asia is shaking up what we know about our home planet. Japanese-American researchers believe they've found a previously unknown set of tectonic plates in the Earth's mantle, which may finally unravel the secret behind a series of mysterious deep earthquakes far deeper than they should be found. Basically, 90% of Earth's deep seismicity, more than 310 miles deep, occurs at the Tonga area where we found our long, flat slab. Johnny Wu, assistant professor of structural geology, tectonics, and mantle structure at the University of Houston, told The Guardian. Wu and his fellow researchers used vibrations from natural earthquakes to generate new pictures of Earth's interior, a recently developed technique Wu compares to the Hubble Space Telescope. We look out, and the further we look out, the more things we discover, not just about the universe. We're actually looking back in time. And this new seismology is like turning the Hubble to look into the Earth, because as we look deeper and get clearer images, we can see what the Earth might have looked like further and further back in time. Yes, this is where you sing Huey Lewis's Back in Time. I left you that space. Specifically, they're looking for 50 to 60 million years into the past when the new plates, which are sitting 250, 400 miles down in the transition zone that sits between the upper and lower sections of the mantle, were likely subducted from levels further up. The fact that these plates sit so far underneath the crust, far away from the edges of the plates on top of them, poses a challenge to our current understanding of subducted slab dynamics, in which slabs sink vertically over time with minimal lateral motion. Our research suggests that earthquakes can be produced thousands of kilometers away from a subduction zone from lateral movements of still attached but mobile stagnant slabs with the uppermost mantle. Wu told The Guardian the conclusions are preliminary and have yet to undergo peer review, but David Rothery, a professor of planetary geosciences at the Open University, said the concept is intriguing. It'll make us reassess the conventional idea of subducting plates being assimilated into the deeper mantle as they go down. Put in layman's terms, newly discovered layer in Earth's mantle may solve earthquake mystery. Oh, man. We got old as dirt, we got transgenic petunia carnage, and we've got earthquake mysteries. And we're just getting going on this Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy. You know, we've got the new chat going in Discord. And you can find the links in the tweets. And we're still figuring it out. It's kind of over the heads of a lot of us. But then there's also other people in there who actually know what they're doing, so they can help us out. Discord. Discord. It's pretty much where we've moved the new chat for the time being. And you can actually even listen to the show through Discord. In addition, we are also streaming live Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Somebody in the chat says, I swear listening to the show makes you quote music. Well, it'll do that. Big music media nerds will constantly notice references and quotes and samples that I put into the show. It's part of what makes it fun to me. Now let's continue with a follow-up of a story that we've been tracking that's been going on for years. And among the many things it makes you think about the slow, molasses-like crawl of justice. A 12-member jury and 4 alternates, including 11 women and 5 men, ready to hear the opening arguments last Monday, 2 days ago, in a $1.9 billion defamation trial scheduled to last 8 weeks at the Union County Courthouse in Elk Point, South Dakota. This is the pink slime trial. ABC News' characterization of a South Dakota meat processor's ground beef product as pink slime almost put Beef Products Incorporated out of business, BPI's lawyer said on Monday in the opening salvo of a closely watched trial. The $5.7 billion lawsuit pitting Big Ag against Big Media. And these are the times that we hope, hey, maybe they'll actually destroy each other. The $5.7 lawsuit pitting Big Ag against Big Media is the first major court challenge against a media company since accusations and the invention of the term fake news by America's next top president and his supporters have become part of the American vernacular. The trial is expected to run 8 weeks. BPI claims ABC, a unit of Walt Disney Corporation, and its reporter Jim Avila, he's really the one going down on this one, defamed BPI by using the term pink slime and making errors and omissions in its 2012 reporting. But ABC lawyer Dane Butswinkas said pink slime was a common term used more than 3,800 times in the media prior to ABC's reports. In the aftermath of ABC's broadcast, BPI closed 3 of its 4 processing plants and said its revenue dropped 80% to $130 million. That success took about 30 years to succeed, and it took ABC less than 30 days to severely damage the company, a lawyer for BPI, Dan Webb, said in court. But Swinkas countered that BPI had already lost multiple customers for LFTB, lean, finely textured beef, aka pink slime, including major fast food chains prior to the ABC reports due to unhappiness with the product. ABC has said its coverage was accurate and deserved protection under the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of religion, speech, and the right to a free press. ABC denies any wrongdoing and is confident its reporting will be fully vindicated, a lawyer for ABC and Avila, Kevin Bain of Williams & Connolly, has said. Now, as we talked about previously, the prep that's gone into this thing. ABC bought a house that they could move into because they figured they were setting up shop. The trial is being held in Elk Point, South Dakota, about 20 miles north of BPI's headquarters, which employs 110 people. Roughly 6% of the area labor force is involved in agriculture and related industries, according to the local Chamber of Commerce. Election records show 67% of the U.S. presidential vote in Union County, where Elk Point sits, was won by Trump, who uses the term fake news to argue that some mainstream media outlets cannot be trusted. Lawyers for BPI have declined to say if they plan to focus on fake news as a tactic at trial. But during a January court hearing, a BPI lawyer, Eric Connolly, told ABC broadcasts and online reports about lean, finely textured beef, LFTB, used unreliable sources and set out to foment public outrage. The ABC reports amounted to fake news, Connolly told the judge. BPI's signature product, commonly mixed into ground beef, is made from beef chunks, including trimmings, and is exposed to bursts of ammonium hydroxide to kill E. coli and other contaminants. Webb said in court on Monday that between March 7th and April 3rd of 2012, ABC used the term pink slime more than 350 times across 6 different media platforms, including TV and online. Reporter Jim Avila, who was in the courtroom wearing a gray suit and striped tie, had cherry-picked experts who backed up the story he wanted to tell and ignored experts who gave information that differed from this narrative, Webb said. Webb said Avila cursed at David Thino, a food safety expert, and hung up on Thino when he contradicted parts of Avila's stories. This is what happens when someone tells ABC something that's not consistent with what they want to hear about the product. But Swinkas, the lawyer for ABC, described Avila as an old-school bulldog journalist and said Thino was paid by BPI and had a close relationship with the company's founder. The focus of ABC's story was not food safety but labeling, but Swinkas said. He said BPI lobbied for years to get its LFTB added to ground beef without labels indicating it was there. Until the secret started to get out to consumers, no one knew that there was a product treated with ammonia in their traditional ground beef. To win its case, BPI must show the network intended to harm the company or knew what it reported was false when it referred to BPI's LFTB product as pink slime. The trial is upending the normally tranquil Elk Point population, 2,000. To make room for overflow crowds, the county commission earmarked $175,000 to turn the Union County Courthouse basement into an enlarged courtroom and move records into a specially constructed separate building. BPI moved modular offices into town to accommodate its legal team, the company said. Meatpacker blames ABC's pink slime for nearly killing the company.
A high-stakes defamation lawsuit opening this week with Beef Products Incorporated taking on ABC News for nearly $6 billion over a series of 2012 reports that referred to BPI's signature product as pink slime, a label the company says torpedoed its revenues. It's the first major court challenge against a media company since accusations of fake news by U.S. President Donald Trump and his supporters have become part of the American vernacular.
You are fake news.
Reuters legal correspondent Anthony Lynn.
Well, they're objecting to what ABC and some critics, using the term pink slime, which, they regard as pejorative. Basically, this is a meat product. They call it lean, finely textured beef, and it's been used for decades as sort of a supplement to other meat cuts in ground beef that's sold in supermarkets, used in fast food.
BPI accusing ABC News, which is owned by Disney, of defaming the company and making errors and omissions. The company has home court advantage, with the trial taking place in Elk Point, South Dakota, just 20 miles north of BPI's headquarters. Union County, where Elk Point is located, was won easily by Trump, who made bashing the mainstream media a part of his presidential campaign. A BPI lawyer even borrowing a phrase often used by the president at a January court hearing, referring to ABC's report as fake news.
Fake news.
But BPI faces a high burden of proof to make its case.
What they would need to show is that ABC knew that what they reported was false before and when they reported it, or that they had a so-called reckless disregard for whether the report was true or not. And that is traditionally a really hard standard to meet. It's, people make mistakes and they correct them, and the press in the United States is usually given a fair bit of leeway on that.
The high-profile lawsuit leading the Union County Commission to earmark $175,000 to convert its courthouse basement into an enlarged courtroom to accommodate the many expected onlookers.
Where did you get this? The alternative media, Jerry. That's where you hear the truth.
You're listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato.
You are listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. I'm your host, Webmaster DJ, and so much more. We're streaming live at MediaMonarchy.com/listen. Huge thanks to everybody that listens live. Hey, they called our poison a funny name. That is actually going to be a really difficult case to make. Now, there are times when these sort of media law cases come up. I'm always really interested in it. That's kind of, I won't say that's my background, but that's the piece of paper I have. I have a communications degree. So I've done a media law and ethics course, and have just always been fascinated by a lot of this. To actually be able to prove we know we're lying and we're doing it to intentionally damage that company, that's going to be tough to prove. Actually kind of surprised this didn't actually get swept away right at the last moment. Right as it was about to go to trial, I was kind of expecting there to be a big settlement and it to all kind of end. This is your Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy food, health, and environment news, and you can actually submit news using hashtag Food World Order or any of the subjects that we talk about in the Media Monarchy Kingdom: geopolitics, cyberspace war, Food World Order, holy hexes, pump up the volume. Hell, we've even got irregularly used ones like media matriarchy. So if you've got stories you think need to be covered, should be covered on your Morning Monarchy, you can always tweet those out with the appropriate hashtag. You can find all those on the tweets. Hey, you don't do any of that stuff? No biggie. James at MediaMonarchy.com. Now we go from pink slime, and I actually have 3 different reports coming from that. Food Safety News, who is one of our biggest sources for our hashtag Food World Order news, has of course been covering this a lot, and actually their main editor-in-chief, Bill Marler, has been involved in defending some of the defendants in this case. Some of the guys that worked for BPI. Pro bono, I believe, even. Now, Food Safety News things can sometimes be colored by their involvement in the powers that shouldn't be. But again, just like everything, do the reading yourself. Come to your own decision. It's fun to go from pink slime to eye patch wearing surf legend and wetsuit pioneer Jack O'Neill. R.I.P., buddy. He died at the age 94 in his California home Saturday, surrounded by family. O'Neill helped invent the freaking wetsuit. allowing surfers to ride the waves in cold water, was a legend of the surfing world and went on to champion marine environmental causes later in life. The 94-year-old created one of the best-known surf brands on the planet after opening his first surf shop in San Francisco way back in 1959. He began wearing his trademark eye patch after losing an eye in a surfing accident while riding a wave in the 70s. O'Neill later moved with his family south to Santa Cruz, California, where he opened his second shop, and by the 1980s had become the world's biggest wetsuit designer and manufacturer. Though initially his friends didn't have much faith in his groundbreaking invention. All my friends said, "O'Neill, you'll sell to 5 friends on the beach and then you'll be out of business." Wanting to surf longer in the cold waters off the California coast, O'Neill began experimenting with a variety of materials, eventually inventing the first neoprene wetsuit still worn by surfers to this day. Actually, had a friend we were hanging out with just yesterday. She said, "Oh, I look good in a wetsuit." Later in life, he began to focus on marine environmental causes, setting up the O'Neill Sea Odyssey in '96, something he considered his proudest achievement. The program has so far allowed nearly 100,000 children to travel on his personal catamaran to the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary in order to learn about marine conservation. "The ocean is alive, and we've got to take care of it," the legendary surfer is quoted as saying, "There is no doubt in my mind that O'Neill Sea Odyssey is the best thing I've ever done." Tributes pouring in on social media from surf groups and enthusiasts from all around the world.
Well, the surfing world has lost a legend. Not only was he a surfer, he was known around the globe for his trademark wetsuits. And IB's Maria Medina reports from Santa Cruz, where Jack O'Neill lived and worked for decades.
He was just a great mind. He was a great man. He had a great spirit.
In Santa Cruz, the man with the eye patch and the beard was a familiar face. But to the surf community, family, and friends,
he was a giant of the surf industry. He was a pioneer of the surf industry.
Jack O'Neill was a legend.
It's a very sad day. I mean, he, to me, was a giant in the world of the ocean.
O'Neill passed away at his Pleasure Point home, a home where he had a clear view of surfers wearing the wetsuit he invented decades ago.
I'm just a new surfer, but, I plan to enjoy his innovation, for years.
O'Neill pioneered the wetsuit in his kitchen at home. He opened his first surf shop in Ocean Beach before opening another shop and moving to Santa Cruz. Today, the O'Neill brand is featured all over the world.
I'm really impressed with the kind of legend he created.
Today, as news spread of his passing, mourners stopped by his home. Jack O'Neill was 94.
He'll live on in the waves around Santa Cruz.
I mean, it was a great life, a well-lived life.
Now, some of you actually recognize those towns and places and neighborhoods being talked about. Some of you may not recognize Jack O'Neill's name at all, but I bet you've seen his name written on t-shirts, written on surfwear. You've seen people walking down the street. O'Neill. Now, there's a picture of him. Might have to be our album art for today. He looks like such a badass. He's got his eye patch, his big burly beard, and he is steering a ship. He's at the big captain's wheel, and there's kind of a lantern in the foreground. Pretty iconic looking. R.I.P. Jack O'Neill, age 94. As another one bites the dust, not too cool, dude. I guess it could be worse, though. The youngest son of reggae star Bob Marley, as well as wealthy legal pot sellers from Colorado, have taken control of High Times magazine, the storied counterculture media brand known around the world.
High Times has sold a majority stake, 60% of its company, for about $42 million to investment firm Arriva Capital. Arriva Capital founder Adam Levin told TechCrunch, with wide-scale marijuana legalization looming, it saw High Times as ill-equipped to roll up the massive opportunities for expansion. In a quote, "I wouldn't say the current company was sleeping at the wheel, but they haven't optimized." According to a letter obtained by TechCrunch, new management will be baked in beside the whole existing High Team staff, including a new head of entertainment and VP of Biz Dev. Will be interesting to see how high they can make this baby soar. Am I right?
TechCrunch, I generally prefer to provide my own dub music bed. Just future reference. A consortium of entertainment and cannabis veterans, including musician Damian Marley and pioneers from Colorado pot shop chain Denver Relief, acquired a controlling interest in High Times at a valuation of $70 million. High Times' new chief executive told the Chronicle Wednesday. This is coming from the San Francisco Chronicle. The deal includes websites, book publishing, and the influential Cannabis Cup trade shows and competitions. The magazine is holding its Northern California event in Santa Rosa this weekend, including seminars and a cannabis cook-off. That is this coming... Oh, no, it's last weekend. Shit. We spaced the date, dude. High Times is the Coca-Cola of cannabis. I don't really know if I would use that kind of language, said CEO Adam Levin, founder of Los Angeles investment firm Oriva Capital, mentioned in that report from TechCrunch. Oriva, O-R-E-V-A Capital, who led the acquisition. We see the opportunity as a diversified media company to bring High Times from the authority and the counterculture movement to a modern media enterprise. And those are the changes happening. Everything wild being made normal. And the most frustrating part is, of course, all the people who got to lord over the prohibition now get to enjoy the exploitation. Such as Big Tobacco. Plenty of companies angling to get in on the coming legalized pot bonanza. Some, however, are lobbying the state to carve off a piece just for them, cigarette wholesalers. The companies that track, deliver, and tax all the cigarettes sold in Massachusetts are seeking a similar monopoly on recreational marijuana when sales begin in 2018. Talking about Massachusetts because this report is coming from the Boston Globe. They've asked state officials to require marijuana producers to sell all their pot products through them, just as most alcohol has to pass through a wholesaler on its way to bars and package stores. The tobacco businesses argue that they have experience safeguarding sensitive products throughout the supply chain using sophisticated tracking technology. Now, that's how we closed out yesterday's show, talking about Walmart using blockchain as their new tracking technology. So they can track all of their factory poison, know exactly where it is on the chain in middle America. The tobacco businesses argue they have experience safeguarding sensitive product through the supply chain using sophisticated tracking technology that makes it difficult for bootleggers to pass off untaxed smuggled cigarettes and easy for inspectors to verify a pack has come through legitimate channels. Hey, we're a legitimate business enterprise. By doing the same for the marijuana industry, they believe they can keep the black market at bay. Tobacco wholesalers want in on recreational marijuana. Say it with me, fuck the fuck off. Now that actually gets into a little bit of how it's run here in Oregon. The OLCC, the Oregon Liquor Control Committee, they're the ones running the marijuana scheme here in Oregon. They were able to essentially make that argument that the tobacco places are making over in Massachusetts. Hey, we already control all the other illicit substances. Why not let us control and tax this latest illicit substance? You're listening to the Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy, my friends. Glad you're here. A couple more stories here as we wrap up our headlines. As we grab another one from Matt Agorist, who notes that across the globe an awakening is happening and people are realizing the power of growing your own food. Last week, who did we hear from? Louis Farrakhan, talking about urban food and urban gardens. We talked about it on the latest Good News Next Week episode. Yisrael Farms, pretty much in the projects in California, in Sacramento. They're doing Project Good, growing our own destiny. And this is what it all comes down to. All those funny fools in the streets wearing their little costumes, yelling against other people wearing their little costumes, propping up the system with a phony left-right divide. We all put down our bullhorns and black masks a long time ago. Make the world you want. Grow the world you want. Grow your own destiny. And everybody's trying to do that all around the world, but then there are places where, of course, the powers that shouldn't be are still rearing their ugly heads. Now, our buddy Brock, he's been on a little bit of an Asian vacation, but he's headed back. And he's headed back to find, I believe, pretty much his town has become the center of some news. The residents of Sunshine Coast, whose city council just unapologetically laid waste to a 7-year-old organically grown fruit tree forest spanning 11 streets, are finding out about the powers that shouldn't be the hard way. A single complaint about a permit sent the city council into a fruit-hating tyrannical whirlspin, eventually leading to the destruction of the entire project. As ABC reports, that's ABC out of Australia. The Australian community has been at the center of a 6-month battle with the council after a complaint was made. The council then ordered residents to obtain public liability insurance and a free permit in order to keep the trees on the footpaths. To be clear, these trees were not planted by some rogue farmer on private property without the owner's permission. The community banded together in a hugely popular project known as Urban Food Street. The precinct has grown immensely over the years as residents volunteered their sidewalk areas for the trees to be grown. More than 200 people participated and benefited from the fruit forest. According to some residents, they were entirely unaware there were permit and insurance requirements until the city council showed up with trucks and mulchers to chop down all the trees. Chris White, chef and resident within the UFS precinct, said this thoughtless destruction of food was done to put in a sidewalk and put the residents in check. It's a way now that they can put a concrete footpath in, and it's a show of force. Which is possibly the more important part. They want that show of force. And they want to seem like they're doing something. You elected me to do something. I'm going to do something. And what do we know about sidewalks? I always used to notice this back in the college campus. And this is what our buddy Corbett was tweeting about very recently. Those concrete sidewalks are central planning. The paths that people make on their own, that's the real free market. And you would see that all over my college campus. All these new, heavy concrete sidewalks, and you would see the actual paths where people would walk. You should wait to see where people will walk, then build your sidewalks over that if you're so into laying down concrete everywhere. New tumor evidence found in confidential glyphosate data. Major news on the glyphosate front. This comes from Sustainable Pulse, which I sign up for their email. The first ever independent analysis of the complete confidential data set sent by industry to the EU for the relicensing of glyphosate shows the EFSA and ECHA's safety assessment would have failed to identify several cases of tumors and cancer following an exposure to the substance. It's high time the complete data set is published in full to enable scrutiny by the scientific community. Basically, according to Christopher Portier, leading environmental health and carcinogenity specialist who's been actively defending the IARC assessment in glyphosate relicensing process in the EU that it causes cancer. The public agencies who performed the scientific assessment of glyphosate's toxicity would have failed to identify 8 cases of statistically significant increase in tumors following glyphosate exposure in the confidential data set provided by industry. They're not even doing the tests correctly to see if it will cause cancer, and yet they're still rushing out with their judgments, and it's good, it's fine. Good God, the only way sometimes these things get the brakes put on is when people croak. Plans by the Indian government to release genetically modified food crops into this predominantly agricultural country have been plagued by opposition from scientists, activists, and politicians, including those owing allegiance to the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, in India. On May 18th, a week after the government's regulator, the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, approved the commercial release of an herbicide-tolerant GM mustard, Anil Dev, age 60, the man on whom the final decision rested as a central environment minister, died of a heart attack. Dave had been under enormous pressure from lobbyists pushing the technology to increase yields on the one hand, which of course has been shown to not actually really happen, and civil society groups opposing GM crops as harmful to the environment and food security on the other. Tarun Vijay, a former member of the parliament for the ruling BJP, claimed in a blog that Dave would have banned GM mustard if he hadn't passed away. Vijay's blog revealed serious opposition within the BJP circles to the idea of using GM technology on mustard, a traditional food item in India. Minister's death disrupts India's GM mustard plans. And another way you might drop dead is if you eat The Death Caps. Oh, Death Caps. Man, I love their latest record. I hear Destroying Angel is on tour with them. Now, all jokes aside, a bumper crop of deadly, wild death cap mushrooms in Northern California is likely to blame for the poisonings of 14 people in December. The culprit, Amanita phalloides, believed to be the world's most dangerous mushroom. All 14 recovered, but 3 of them required liver transplants, and a toddler suffered permanent brain damage. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends that anyone picking wild mushrooms have them evaluated by a specialist before eating them. Wild-picked mushrooms should be evaluated by a trained mycologist, fungi expert, before ingestion, according to the report published in the June 2nd issue of the CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. That is a fun read. Woo! Inexperienced foragers should be strongly discouraged from eating any wild mushrooms, wrote Kathy Vo, University of California, San Francisco's Department of Emergency Medicine, and colleagues. The 14 people described in the report had eaten wild mushrooms they picked themselves or received from others. In previous years, the California Poison Control System had only received a few reports of mushroom poisonings each year. This large outbreak may be related to a reported increase in the growth of wild mushrooms in 2016, triggered by greater rainfall and warm weather at the end of Northern California's autumn. We've actually talked about picking mushrooms pretty recently. I had a listener actually reach out and say, hey, if we ever want to get out of the city and go hike and go pick mushrooms, absolutely. Death cap mushrooms. Now, the story I just read from came from CBS News, but I've also got another one coming from the aforementioned Food Safety News. Death caps pose year-round threat to mushroom lovers, and not very helpful. They've kind of got a drawing up, as our buddy Matt pointed out. Hey, thanks for using not photorealistic photos. Warning, don't eat this drawing. Like, well, I maybe do better with a picture, you guys. Death caps. That's how we wrap up your Food World Order edition, and a fantastic transition into Thursday's dark and disturbing Holy Hexes Morning Monarchy. Each day of the week, we focus in on a different area of the news. Monday is world news, Tuesday's tech, Wednesday is health, Thursday is weird, and Friday, media memes. Now again, everything we just covered will be included in the show notes, so I would love it if you would continue the research and follow up with us, and always let us know of your new discoveries. That's how we do this. That's how we work together as a team. There is a beautiful song we're going to go out with today from a group that calls themselves the Secret Sisters. But first, let's look at this day in history. June 7th, 1832, Asian cholera reaches Quebec, brought by those damn dirty Irish immigrants. Kills about 6,000 in Lower Canada. June 7th, 1899, American temperance crusader Carrie Nation brings her campaign of vandalizing alcohol-serving establishments, begins her campaign of vandalizing alcohol-serving establishments on this day by destroying the inventory in a saloon in Kiowa, Kansas. Now, of course, she would also be helped out by the United States government, who poisoned alcohol during Prohibition. So they're going to save you by killing you. That's the state in a nutshell, in a shot glass, if you will. June 7th, 1906, Cunard Line's RMS Lusitania is launched from the John Brown shipyard in Glasgow, Scotland. That's in 1906, and of course would sail around for a few years. Jumping ahead a couple of decades, June 7th, 1955, Lux Radio Theater signs off the air permanently. The show had launched in New York in 1934 and featured radio adaptations of Broadway shows and popular films. And of course, you might know that I'm an old-time radio fan and I have a giant collection of Lux Radio Theater. That's also something we might add into our Media Monarchy stream, a little OTR. June 7th, 1965, the Supreme Court of the United States hands down its decision in Griswold v. Connecticut, prohibiting the states from criminalizing the use of contraception by married couples. Ooh, thanks again, government. June 7th, 1971, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division of the U.S. Internal Revenue Service raids the home of Ken Ballou for illegal possession of hand grenades. Thanks again, government. June 7th, 1977, 500 million people watched the high day of the Silver Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II. It's on television. It's on the tube. June 7th, 1978, Prince's first single, Soft and Wet, was released on this day. 1979, Chuck Berry performed at the White House at the request of U.S. President Jimmy Carter. June 7th, 1981, this day in Israeli aggression, the Israeli Air Force destroys Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor during Operation Opera. Of course, Israel being never afraid of fucking up nuclear reactors. Hey, what'll happen? I don't know. June 7th, 1982, Priscilla Presley opens Graceland to the public. The bathroom where Elvis died 5 years earlier is kept off limits. Our second bit of this day in Prince history, June 7th, 1993, Prince changed his name to Unpronounceable Symbol, the artist. That was so odd. That was such a weird time. Princetory. Yes, your day in Princetory. June 7th, that same day, 1993, the groundbreaking ceremony was held for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum in Cleveland, because, of course, as you know, Cleveland rocks. June 7th, 2000, the United Nations defines the blue line as the border between Israel and Lebanon. And finally, on this day, June 7th, 2002, in Chicago, Illinois, R. Kelly was booked on child pornography charges. He had been arrested 2 days before and released after posting bond.
I just want to say, y'all need to leave him alone. That's not R. Kelly.
R. Kelly fans were the only ones talking outside a Chicago courthouse Tuesday. That's because a gag order is in effect as the long-delayed child pornography trial begins. Kelly is accused of videotaping himself having sex with an underage girl sometime between January 1998 and November 2000. The sex tape, all 27 minutes of it, was shown to jurors by the prosecution. Prosecutors maintain the girl in the video was as young as 13 when it was made. Kelly's defense team contends it is not Kelly on the tape. One of his attorneys spoke at length about a mole the size of a dime on Kelly's lower back that they say is missing from the man on the tape. The case is expected to last weeks. Kelly faces up to 15 years if convicted.
Spoiler alert, he is not convicted and is acquitted of all charges. Now, interestingly enough, I was actually just watching a moment of Chappelle's Show's bit about R. Kelly. That was the jury trial skit. And I actually ran into that because we had a friend tweet out and note that our buddy Lee Sellers that we mentioned yesterday, you know, the governor of Ohio on the latest House of Cards. I said he'd been in ER and Sopranos, and our friend Girder pointed out that actually, and I forgot, this is one of his first biggies, he was in Chappelle's Show. He's in the skit where what Dave thinks about when people are bugging him, and it's got the little thought balloon up above him. Back to this day in history. Published in Media Monarchy a decade ago today, June 7th, 2007, CIA, covert imperialist activity. That's right, CIA running black ops against Iran. Central Intelligence Agency received approval at least twice to conduct an information war against several countries in the Middle East, of course, aimed at Iran. The other story published to Media Monarchy a decade ago today, candidates and elites have trouble confronting change. The New York activist group known as We Are Change been very busy lately, from David Rockefeller's home to an arrest after the New Hampshire debate. God, it's so interesting to go through these 10 years ago stories. Past his prologue, I think it is very important to see where we've been to figure out where we are right now and what that means and where we need to go. Celebrating birthdays today, June 7th. English cricketer and fashion designer Beau Brummel, a.k.a. the Dandy Style. Born on this day, 1778. June 7th, 1909, Jessica Tandy was born on this day. It's also Dino's birthday, Dean Martin. Born on this day in 1917. Director, producer, screenwriter, half of Merchant Ivory, maker of boring British films, James Ivory, born on this day. It's also Welsh singer and actor Tom Jones. We saw him open for Morrissey. That was one of Cassie's probably favorite shows. It was really good. I didn't know that TV talk show host and former drummer Jenny Jones was a Palestinian-Canadian singer, drummer, and talk show host. She's celebrating her birthday today. Liam Neeson, William Forsythe, L.A. Reid. That was Jimmy James' birthday yesterday. And the hat trick in Princetory. It's his fucking birthday today. Born on this day in 1958. It's also our Vice President's birthday, Mike Pence. And he shares a birthday with Mick Foley, Damian Hirst, Dave Navarro, Bear Grylls, Allen Iverson, Bill Hader, Michael Cera, and Iggy Azalea. I don't know if any of those people are going to make it into our daily DJ set at noon, but it is going to be a Wednesday Pump Up the Volume coming up at noon Pacific time, and we keep it getting it a little more earthy. We're trying to make the music somewhat parallel the news that we talk about on each day. So Tuesday's kind of techno, and that's why I'm making Wednesday a little folkier, a little earthier. So I hope you join us in about 2 hours live for your Pump Up the Volume, your daily DJ set at noon, where we will be playing some fantastic twangy new music, in addition to other awesome sounds. And to wet that whistle, go out with really beautiful song. I'm really digging this one. You Don't Own Me Anymore, the title track from the Secret Sisters. Their LP is coming out this Friday, and we're going out with their fantastic song, You Don't Own Me. There it is, the Food, Health, and Environment edition of your Morning Monarchy, and I really appreciate you being here, taking part in the chat, listening live. We're building ourselves with your help. MediaMonarchy.com/support. That's the Food World Order edition of your Morning Monarchy for Wednesday, June 7th, 2017. I am James Evan Pilato from MediaMonarchy.com. Again, thanking you so much for listening and reminding you, as always, don't hate the media, become the media. Take care.
You got a lot of nerve, staking a claim on me, taking my heart away, making a girl believe that in a lovesick blur, all of the perfect words, she would belong to you, you would belong to her. Not possession. You don't own me anymore. What am I still fighting for? You don't own me anymore. What am I still my head and my heart seem to never agree, 'cause my head knows it's best that you set me free. My heart says that nothing will satisfy me after so many years, so many tears. Your love is cereal, all of my sympathy to the poor victim, the lover who follows me. One more admonition, your new requisition. So when she fills my place, and when her love grows deep, remember this, my dear, she isn't yours to keep.
listening to Media Monarchy with James Evan Pilato. Since 2005, Media Monarchy has covered the real news about politics, health, technology, and the occult, all remixed with music and media that matters. Go to MediaMonarchy.com/support and become a monthly subscriber so you can help keep independent, non-commercial, alternative media going and growing. Thanks.